So your first speaker today is a seasoned IT and IS veteran with over 20 years of information security experience in both consultative and operational roles, AKA old. He leads DirectDefense, where he is responsible for the day-to-day management of the company, as well as providing guidance and direction for DirectDefense's security service offerings, which is useful with the numerous and often intimidating volume of technologies coming to the security market today. During the course of his presentation, you will discuss specific technologies, solution, and strategies that actually work in preventing and/or detecting attacks, all from the attacker's perspective. Presenting Removing the Snake Oil from Your Security Program, please help me welcome Jim Broome.
So can you hear me back there, Taylor? All right, cool. So for those that have never seen me present before, there's obviously a few new faces, and actually it's been about 5 years since I've presented in the Dallas area. Usually a frequent attendant down at the HUSEC-Con, occasionally make it to LASCON here in the Texas state, but you can find me on YouTube and other places. Removing the snake oil is actually a continuation of a presentation series we've been doing for the last 3 to 4 years. It started with Security That Works, Even on a Budget, which was our first one that actually show you common techniques and things like that that actually don't require a whole lot of money. They actually require a little bit of effort to actually address the security posture for the organization. Then we did Catch Me If You Can. So we actually kind of talk about some key points we're going to hit on today, which is a lot of people have a lot of solutions in place, but they really don't know how, they haven't properly tuned them, they haven't properly implemented them, or they don't have enough people to actually monitor and catch that bad guy in the act. And so, really this is just more and more of that continuation. The bigger thing was I was challenged finally, because if you haven't heard me, or as you've probably heard me make some comments about that company with a big teal bridge on their logo, kind of opinionated, especially when it comes to people that actually introduce and say they stop the bad guys, because as an industry we've done a terrible job of doing that. So I call BS where BS is required on certain vendors. I challenge them often as a pen tester, as an operator, and usually they eventually concede, or we come to a common ground of, okay, you can do it, but not so much. And so this is really the general gist of this presentation was, all right, Jim, you've bagged on everybody else. Tell me what actually works. So I'm like, all right, fair enough. That's a fair statement to come and hit me with. So let's actually talk about things that actually work, be it new technologies or process and procedure. So quick, obviously the blurb. I'm the old guy in front. Been doing this for 20 plus years. Used to work for a company called Netrix way back in the day. For you checkpoint guys, I was the guy that wrote all your certification programs. CCSA, CCSE members. Woo! From there, I went to ISS, so as a researcher and part of the X-Force pen test team. So we did a lot of the earlier, what you would consider exploitation frameworks and vulnerability scanners. We released Real Secure, so like one of the first widely commercial accessible IDS, IPSs in the day. Then for the last few years, I was at Accubant before we actually ultimately started DirectDefense. So the guys, the company may be new, but the guys that run it, not so much. We've been around for a while. And if you want to talk to us more, feel free to come by the booth. More importantly, if you haven't hit the booth already, we have an iWatch we're giving away this afternoon in the raffle. So just a little, enticement. So the main 4 areas we're going to talk about today are really the 4 areas most people struggle with actually implementing security in their environment, or at least trying to find solutions and ways to identify the bad guy when they're in. So the main areas we're going to look at is the network security and intrusion detection, patch and configuration management, which is usually a bigger challenge for most people. And then my 2 biggest snake oils, I personally hold a lot of criticism against the industry. SIM, $100,000, and what'd you get? And then finally, endpoint protection. Who here believes that the big 3 are going to protect you? Anyone believe in McAfee, Symantec, or Trend Micro's ability? No hands. Okay. We're on a good starting ground. So why is this really important? It's 2015, and as you probably heard, the sad facts are, at this point in time, it still takes the company 200 plus days to identify they've been breached. 85% of that notification happens from outside the company, aka the guys like previously from the FBI knocking on your front door and saying, hey, we served a warrant with Interpol halfway around the world and we found your data. That's actually how most of them get notified. And so that's a very staggering fact. If you look at some of the interesting footnotes out of that, we've actually gotten marginally better Because in 2013, it was 253 days. This year, they averaged 233 days. So we knocked it down 20 days. So yay. We have roughly about a 3% return on billions and billions of dollars being spent. Why are these attacks so successful over and over again? Two most common traits, if you boil it down, to most organizations on how they got penetrated and why they missed it, was number one was a lack of visibility. Is that a technology issue? Is that a solution issue? Is that an approach issue? And number two, lack of actually knowing what's being attacked. People are still addressing security in the old way. I'm keeping the bad guys out. Guess what? Your employees aren't. Your employees are letting them right on in. Is it directly their fault? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on their intent. But in many cases, it's because we did not provide them a foundationally secure platform to go and browse the internet. That's all it takes to get compromised today is just open up a browser and hitting the wrong page. There is no user interaction at all, other than going to the URL. So let's address that latter part. What's getting attacked? So for those that are old enough to remember, before the internet, we actually, back in the old days, before things were commonly connected, we just went and targeted the users. If I was breaking into a major corporation, I would profile the company. I would call the Rolodex and find out who the director of operations was, who the admins were, and I would actually go after them directly. Pretend to, in the old school vernacular, if you're a freaker from back in the day playing with a phone system, I'm on a pole and I really need that access number to get the bridge line. You would just attack the infrastructure. You would attack the individuals. There was no point of access or easy access. Then this thing called the internet hit. I think we all kind of know what it is now. And the problem was people started putting their stuff directly on their internets. And firewalls were not commonplace until 2001. So as a pen tester, up until 2001, it was like fish in a barrel. Didn't have to call anybody, didn't have to talk to anybody. It's like, oh, we got the green light and the get out of jail free card to hack so-and-so. Great. Okay, I'm done. I have been on kickoff calls that by the time we were done with the kickoff call, we already had root on the first 12 boxes. So, thank you, Sun Solars. It was that easy because there was nothing slowing us down. It was, wide in, walk right into the front door. There was nothing to filter the bad guys out. Then around 2001, firewalls became commonplace. Intrusion detection became a little bit more commonplace. So what do? Again, we didn't bother hacking the user. We just started hacking the stuff you made available. The web server that runs on port 80 that's never been patched because the CD stopped spinning. I'm dating myself. The configuration that was, out the box, all those default scripts that Apache used to ship with, especially PHP info, love that one. You could do remote command injection on that box and take right on over. It's like a nice little step, it's almost like a command prompt through a web page. But again, we were just abusing or attacking what was natively there or unadministered. Finally, around 2004, it became pretty commonplace to say, all right, they're starting to get good. Microsoft has spent billions of dollars on Patch Tuesday, so people are actually doing a pretty good job of patching that IIS web server. Not perfect, but better. And we started, what's the next big target? Well, this company exists because they do X. They sell stuff, and this really big database is all their customers. Hey, let's go steal that. And we started attacking the applications. So that's where you saw the rise, the massive breaches of 65 million accounts were hoovered out of this one web app and those type of things, or OPM, those type of hacks that, you saw massive breaches that, starting to hit the common public news. Then, realistically, around 2010, we've come full circle. During all this time, we spent almost 15, nearly 20 years addressing all this other stuff, dealing with the periphery. But at no point in time do we ever actually start educating our users how to do safe, secure browsing and safe internet etiquette, nor do we actually start addressing desktop patching. And that's really where we're back around to, is we're directly attacking your users again. The interesting point of why do we do this is because once we successfully compromise a user system, we have their permission rights, and we're already on the inside, in 9 times out of 10. So I bypassed all your perimeter, and all the attacks are now occurring from inside your organization. So everybody clear on where we're at, targeting space. All that stuff's still getting hacked, but the quick bang for your buck is still just going to attack your users. So let's start, taking a look at some of these technologies and approaches on why we need to change things. So the first one, being a really big firewall guy from back in the day, we were like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This is going to slow the hacker down. No. I actually used to show it in my class when I actually was doing the training. It's like, just because you stopped me to only port 80 doesn't mean I can't do and bad things will cross port 80 on your web server and take over. So like in the classroom, I would do like the old back orifice and open the CD tray on the students and have fun with them. But it just kind of give the example of, most organizations are still dealing with the concept that a firewall is a security device. I would actually argue it's part of network operations. It's part of availability. It's not really doing a lot of security nowadays because of the old antiquated protocol approach. Most organizations are still only looking at what's coming in. They're not looking at what's leaving. So I can, time and time again, I can do pen test or network config, device config reviews. And I'll find that, local net, any except as the corporate policy to allow internet access. And you just scream, why? Why do you even exist? This doesn't, while it allows employees to go do whatever they want, it allows anything to leave your environment as well. And so it's coming back to being able to actually spot that hacker when they actually, successfully penetrate your environment. How are you going to see that activity? Not enough firewalls is the other common case. It's been a challenge for most organizations to actually properly segment. When you go into a corporate setting and servers are in the same subnet as user workstations, that may be a challenge for you. HR is still in the same subnet as the rest of the employees. That's where the entire company payroll sits. Probably want to isolate that. I'm just saying. So again, it's finding creative ways to actually segment and properly implement some level of security to stop or at least identify horizontal movement in the organization. And then lack of visibility. Packet and protocol-based policies are no longer enough. They're not giving us enough visibility of what's going on. And you'll hear me say time and time again, visibility. What does this really mean at a firewall level? Who here allows people to go to Facebook? Just a secondary. While they're at the office, is it okay for them to post? So yeah, it's policies accepted. Something I have some clients that it's not. They work in certain environments that they can browse all day long, but they can't actually interact with Facebook. How do you get that functionality? Next-gen firewalls. Open App ID, which is what Cisco has now labeled that moniker, but application ID. The ability to actually delve into, and if you didn't know the stat, it's 65% of all traffic on the internet is HTTP, HTTPS. So ergo, approximately 60% of the overall traffic on your network is probably going to be HTTP, HTTPS. If you don't have the ability to visibly look inside of what's going on, other than user can go to here via port 80, you're going to have a tough time slowing things down. Another common example, how do you know that Bob is just checking his Yahoo Mail versus sending a very large attachment out of Yahoo Mail from your corporate server? Do you have the ability to even see that? And that's really the crux of the argument of why going next gen, why these newer technologies mean so much, is because the user experience from 15 years ago when I would set up a firewall and actually have some granular control, I used to have to allow 15 to 20 services for the users to be able to go out on the internet as they would at home. That's down to usually less than 6. HTTP, HTTPS, ping maybe, email, depending on the scenario, and from there, could be ICMP, could be some random service that's unique to them. That's really what most people interact with the internet today. It's HTTP, HTTPS, 9 times out of 10. So again, it's do I need to allow that any type mindset in my organization? Probably not. We can probably shrink that down or have a few other exceptions to the overall policy. The other part is network segmentation. This year alone, there has never been a time in our industry to be able to implement zero trust model implementations. By that, you can have multiple firewalls, be it physical or virtual, could be commercial products, could be IP tables running on a Linux VM. I don't care. If you can manage it, there's never been an easier time with basic technology principles to actually implement network segmentation properly in an environment. So you've got a lot of flexibility, both paid for as well as free services. PFX is a great little firewall that just runs like a rock star, and it can run on both physical and virtual hardware. The other part is alternatives. Let's say you're so heavily invested in the antiquated technology, aka it's not your choice. You got overruled. You're still stuck with Cisco for the next 4 years. Good news is the ASA is finally catching up to the rest of the industry. They're about a year away from having a real, next-gen-ish type product. So over the next 12 months, find ways to actually alleviate your pain. Some of you actually have them in your organization. You may have not noticed them. It's called content filters. We used to laugh when people had to put content filtering in their organization, make sure people weren't surfing porn or whatever, anything objectionable. That actually is basically what next-gen technology is. It's an application gateway running on top of a stateful inspection engine. So it actually gives you that visibility into what's leaving your environment, HTTP, HTTPS. They're throwing a label on it and saying you're going to bad sites, but at least I now have the visibility to see what was leaving the environment. Next up, my personal favorite. Coming from a company that built IDS and IPS solutions with Real Secure back in the day, I've always had mixed emotions about it. So it had a lot of promise. It was supposed to be the burglar alarm for your network. But has anyone ever dealt with a burglar alarm in their home or on their car? Those things are noisy, and how many times did it actually go off when you really needed it? Pretty rare. And there's a reason why. I mean, at the end of the day, protocol-based approach, unfortunately, I even more simplistic of it, which is if you look around, try to go buy one. There's only like 4 or 5 vendors left. They've all distilled down. There's the snort derivatives, source fires, aka Cisco now. You've got your tipping point who's still hanging around. And then, a few other, like the StoneSoft guys that got recently acquired by McAfee and so forth. But there's not a lot of standalone solutions out there. And there's a reason why. They really didn't provide much value. They threw out a lot of alerts. They were very noisy. But in typical user behavior, what happens when the alarm keeps going off? We take the, pair of dikes and cut the wire to the alarm. And, hey, problem solved. You don't have to worry about that alarm going off anymore. And that's, unfortunately, that's pretty much what's happened in this industry is, basically we generate too much alerts, too much volume of stuff to look at. There's no way that anybody, one single human can look at that. Turn it off. It was just distracting anyway. Unfortunately, that's kind of where, we abuse things. In the Catch Me If You Can, we actually show at no point in time did we ever generate something that would be a high alert out of any commercially available IDS, IPS today. We stay in the low and the medium range and what most people consider noise. But yet we fully compromise the organization. Signatures. How good are signatures? How good are signatures? Current helps, does help. Unfortunately, it's just like antivirus. While there are some really good signatures out there, it takes very little effort to just tweak it just a little bit and magically I become invisible. So, case in point with the last PHP worm that came around about 6 months ago, the first variant came out, snort and emerging threats throughout some signature updates, and we started seeing hits, and then about 32 hours later, magically it went quiet again. And all they did was they changed, literally they went from this slash to that slash and doubled it up. It's basically an interpreted, /. That's how hard it is to get past most IDS IPSs. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to become quickly invisible. And lastly is placement. Anyone here today care who's scanning you from the internet? Just a quick show of hands. No, we don't care. Guess what? Let me solve this question for you right now. You do get scanned. It averages, depending on where you're at geographically in the world, about 40 to 48 times per hour. Because there's a bunch of security researchers, and then there's a bunch of not-so-security researchers scanning all of IPv4 with mass-scan and other utilities just to see what's out there. If you want a simple example, go to Shodan. Shodan's a great, the internet search engine or the internet of Google for network devices. So basically, it's just collecting and seeing what's out there visibly. Every IP address in the IPv4 space gets scanned no less than 40 times an hour. It's just it's a common fact. So when you saw a certain person up there in front of the Senate saying we knock down 10 million attacks a day, first every security guy or operations guy in the entire room stood up and said, firewall log. That's not a real statistic anymore. Sorry. You need to tell me what's on the inside. So is the intrusion detection happening from the inside? In most cases, no. Right now, it's still about 65% of all placements of IDS, IPS sensors are still on the outside. Not a lot of really good attention being focused on the inside, and that's unfortunately where most of the attacks that have made news in the last 2 years have come from. It was malware that got in, and then the person started laterally moving. So why do we want to look at new gen technologies? I can really simplify this in one word. That is context. The new generation of technologies, like, for example, Light Cyber or Cyber Reason, that have come out of Israel, are very compelling in the fact that they basically do more than just a protocol detection. They do a protocol detection, and then they actually add a couple of extra components to it. Was that user doing something anomalous at that time? Is there something running in memory on that user's system at that time? It's actually a pure network-based deployment in the case of Light Cyber, and it logs in and grabs RAM off the system. So it's adding context. It's doing 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. I found 3 pieces of evidence that all corroborate this network anomaly I saw. You should probably go look at that. There is context to that alert, not, hey, Jim, I saw this bad packet. Hey, Jim, no, really, I saw this bad packet. No, I saw this really bad packet again. That's kind of that's the difference between the two of, traditional protocol-based is just going to tell you it saw something bad, you should probably look into it. The new generation stuff adds context to that argument. I saw 3 or 4 things bad, and they all point to, yes, this is bad, go look. Unfortunately, the font's not showing up over there, but if you pull the stat from the Verizon breach report or from the TrustWave report that just came out a couple weeks ago, 90% of all compromises leverage compromised credentials. Everyone they investigated, they found signs that someone stole a credential either through malware and got on a box and reused that, or tricked someone into giving up their password and then just reused it over and over and over again. So what's one quick way to identify you've been breached? Anyone? Log management, actually log, successful and failed logins. So you can actually start looking for these type of anomalies. These are the basic little simple things we can do to actually catch the guys in the act. Visibility, the main thing to really focus on in the visibility of the new generation of technologies is not just network, it's also behavior. So the other example I commonly use is the Bradley Manning story, Chelsea Manning story. You have an authorized user in your network that is now doing something outside of their normal behavior routine. In his case, he was actually downloading thousands of files. Was that acceptable behavior? Yes, no. Over time, you'll probably learn that that typical employee only accesses 500 files a day. Now they're hoovering down 10,000. You should probably look into this. These type of technologies bring that context to their alerts. So when they see a massive rewrite of a directory, they see a massive read of a directory, they throw a flag. This is outside of that normal behavior for that type of employee or that area that I've been looking at. It's those type of next-gen things of context. This is out of context. This is out of the norm of what I've been seeing. Last but not least is alternatives. If you can't do it at the network-based, try to do it at the endpoint. And that's where Cybereason comes into play. Cybereason's approach is actually deploying an agent. I know, another agent. They deploy an agent on the endpoint, and they monitor that behavior. What that gives them not only is the ability to actually corroborate a mass infection going on, because have anyone actually ever done forensics before? Just quick show of hands. Okay, one hand, kind of, sort of. Okay. So looking into an event, you have 2 computers that you know have been compromised. On the computer 1, you see abc.exe is the payload. And on the other box, you see xyz.exe is the payload. How do you know if that was 2 individual attacks or one combined effort? A lot of effort. It's a lot of having to go through and got to go look at my firewall logs, see if I logged anything, to see if they were talking back to the same command and control server. I've got to look to see if these files were signed digitally with the same certs from the same guy or different group. Where did this file geographically come from? All that's built into Cybereason and Light Cyber when they do their file analysis. So it's the first step of incident response. And so it's, again, adding, if you can't get it on the network sensor side, add it to the endpoint so at least you have some visibility of what's going on. I love showing this slide. This is, I don't shill for very many vendors out there, but I love this in the fact that this is actually a working sensor that has been running for 2.5 months. Can you count the number of alerts that have been fired in 2.5 months? Nope. 45? 45? Ballparkish? So 0, 9, 26. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, it's a sensor, an alarm sensor that's been running that's only thrown 45 alerts in just under 2 months. I challenge any protocol-based IPS to get that, and get that small in less than an hour. It means it's not actually doing anything at that point. And that's kind of really the argument of, in most cases, most operational guys are so overloaded with alarms going off that they don't have time to look at it and actually, really analyze something. With the next generation technology, next generation approaches, you do. More importantly, when you actually go down and delve into the information that's under there, you can see that this one particular hit started out as a spam bot on the network, aka it's tried to send 22,000 emails. So from a network perspective, it looked kind of obvious. We saw a lot of volume of traffic coming off of this. When it actually logged into the box, it was actually able to identify that there was a process running. So we now actually had the process that generated that network anomaly. It grabbed that process, the actual executable running. It grabbed the files associated with the installer, threw them out into a sandbox out in the cloud, analyzed it, said, yep, you got malware. And then from there, I actually provided some more context of what happened to that system while that piece of malware was running. It grabbed the actual data packets, was looking at what was going on, It says it's exfiltration. What it's actually doing in this particular instance is it was actually grabbing the content for the ads that it was sending out in the spam bot. So we were actually able to see, the full life cycle. This is actually part of the Anchor toolkit. If you're not familiar with the exploit kit, basically there's 3 or 4 types of payloads. This is one of them, which is just a malvertiser payload. You become a relay, a spam relay at that point. The next one is the harsh one. That's the one that they actually take over your system, and they do kinds of fun stuff, including ransomware. And guess what was sitting right behind this payload? Ransomware. So this is the one instance where I was actually, caught myself and had to chuckle in the executive outbrief of, hey, congratulations, you were infected by this one first, which wouldn't let go for the ransomware to install. So that's the only thing that saved you, was you were already previously infected. The malware guys, the malware guys have gotten so confrontational with each other that once they get on there, they actually put the fences down so the next guy can't, take over their already infected box. So, it's like, this is the one case where you're happy you got infected with this because this was much worse. And the time signatures, they were only 15 minutes apart. Oh, sorry. If you can't really read it, go back one. If you can't really read it, that's actually all the conditions that both LightCyber and CyberReason can detect. So if you're a bad guy, or as I have fun with other pen testers, is like, if I don't catch you on the inbound, I'm going to catch you when you start moving around over there. So they've got the visibility to actually see when you start moving laterally and horizontally and throw alerts off of that one. So even if you get your super whiz bang, interpreter session that you've gone through 20 steps to encode onto the box, guess what? I'm still going to catch you when you start moving. So I'm at least going to get you down to, I can at least catch you within a couple hours. Whereas the existing industry standard is 200 plus days. Any questions on that side? All right. So my personal favorite, what we've continually done wrong, patch management and configuration management. Who here has anybody in their organization currently spending more than 4 hours a week on patch administration? Doing it wrong. So why is that happening? In most cases, because there's really been no investment in most organizations into addressing patch management. They continue to believe that Microsoft's WSUS, SCCM, whatever the hell they're calling it this year, is effective. It's not. I can answer that real quick for you. You're either going to not pay up front for a solution, or you're going to pay in virtual and headcount to write all these other patches that you need to deploy with SCCM. Typically, the average organization I see, once they've learned how to automate it, takes them 25 minutes to roll a custom patch out with SCCM. Now, how many patches come out a month? With Adobe alone? Quite a few. So that's how much time someone's wasting trying to beat a free solution in submission. If your company is willing to invest that much in FTE, full-time employee, bravo, congratulations. I have yet to meet you're one of the few snowflakes in the industry. Sorry. Most organizations are highly underfunded when it comes to doing patch management effectively. The rule is simple. Patch or get hacked. There is no really gray area in this one today. It doesn't take long. When Patch Tuesday comes out, usually there's a working exploit within 48 hours if there's enough effort thrown behind it. More importantly, real simple, if it shows up in Metasploit, it's being actively breached across the internet. So, usually that's the sure sign that, your exploit has become mainstream when it pops up in Metasploit. So, there's not a lot of gray area. You need to figure out how to patch effectively. More importantly, you need to figure out why you're patching. Why you're doing configuration management in the first place. It's not to keep the bad guys out. It's just trying to keep things running in most cases. But more importantly, there are standards out there. Why is there all these wonderful compliance standards out there? I use and abuse PCI a lot. As a pen tester, I chuckle a lot at it. It's the bare minimum standard. Unfortunately, that's the high mark for most companies. Is I want to be compliant. I'm like, how about secure? And that's really the catch here is figuring out ways to actually adopt standardization in your environment so you actually have a target. What am I shooting for? Why am I doing this? And in most cases, you'll find out, as we talk about in the next section here, is that lack of visibility. Why am I hitting those targets? What am I really trying to do? Where am I missing my gaps? Well, the great news is we produce tons of data in this industry. Problem is a lot of people struggle to figure out ways to actually slice and dice it and get some visibility into it. So I can help you with that as well. So the first part, how do we patch? Automate the crap out of it. Number one is if you've got a modern operating system environment, it's fairly common at this point. And, there are always exceptions of something does break. Never 100% guarantee. But in all honesty, at this point, Windows 7, Windows 2008 and above, pretty rare that a patch truly causes devastating, problems in the organization when it's rolled out. So automate as much as you can. More importantly, in the desktop environment, automate all that third-party junk that's running on our desktop. Office, our wonderful friends at Adobe, WinZip, still, WinRAR, was it WinRAR came out today with yet another exploit. So it's everything that's running on your desktops, automate. Get it patched as fast as possible. In most organizations, you'll find you can actually automate patch deployment on as much as 80% of your environment. There's always going to be that legacy box that no one can touch because it runs everything, and if we patch it, it's going to fall apart. I get it. I understand. So what do you do with that? You put it as far away from everything else. Network segmentation, that every time I walk into a place that, oh, we're a mainframe, no one knows how to hack those. I'm like, I cut my teeth on these, yo. This is not a problem. This is real. I know how to hack a mainframe. So, when you go into those organizations, it's like, first, what's the best thing we can do? I'm like, get it as far away from everything else. There's no reason for this to be accessible to desktops. They're modern. This is not. Get it out of here. Segment it away. More importantly, get it down to only a few services and a few things that only talk to it. But that's the most common way to actually start addressing these issues. And my personal favorite is the one everybody abuses, and that's Java. I'll wait for one more slide to talk about that. But number one is visualize what's your target? What are you going after? And this is actually a utility that we actually created a couple of years ago called Threat Advisor. We aggregate vulnerability data, so you can do asset management, remediation management in one place. We roll that all back up to root cause. Is this a patching problem? Is this a config problem? Is this an app problem? Is it a logic problem? Is it a physical security problem? We have roughly about 9 root causes in there. But then we break them back down. So from a patching standpoint, when you're talking to executives, who here doesn't know about Patch Tuesday? No one. Everybody knows to patch your system, at least try to let your systems patch every month. So in most cases, you'll find that the Microsoft problem for most organizations is 25 to 45% of the overall patching problem. It's everything else that's not the Microsoft OS that's currently being missed. Guess what the bad guys are hitting? Guess what my pen testers are hitting and what I'm hitting? Everything that's not Microsoft off the bat. I love myself some, JBoss. That wonderful, lights out board that's in all your HP and compact, or not compact anymore, HP and Dell servers. Love that stuff. Gives me, complete God access at the hardware layer, and then I can, add my own CD and cause one of the boxes to reboot the blade. Hey, it's not that hard to actually take over a lot of those, systems, and that's not a Microsoft patch. That's a vendor patch. That's a third-party patch, and that's usually the biggest target in most organizations. Is everything that's not the Microsoft OS. There should be some things that sit on top of the OS, but in most cases, it's the browsers that are getting actively exploited. Lots of end-of-life software that's still floating around the organization, as well as end-of-life operating systems like XP 2003. Adobe gets their own category at this point. The worst one I've seen so far was it was actually about 85% of one particular organization's problem. They had actually patched everything but Adobe. And then finally, your databases, your Java, you'll find little, your place will be a little bit different, but for the most part, realistically, Microsoft OS is not your biggest threat in most organizations. It's everything that's not Microsoft. Why do you standardize? Really 2 reasons. Number one is to update your configuration to give you enough evidence if you have a breach. If you go and look at the PCI standard, or the simplest one, the Center of Information Security Standard, the benchmarks they release, over half of it deals with auditing and logging. That's to give yourself enough evidence when you do have a breach. And that's the main thing I tell folks. You don't have to be 100%. Be 75. But why do we do that? Why do we pick a number we actually want to adhere to? Because you can measure it. You can actually show you're getting better. You're actually, you're providing yardstick. Most organizations today, out of the box, a standard Windows 2008 server, 2003 server, 2012 server is only about 35 to 45% compatible with the PCI or the CIS standard. You actually have to do stuff to it, and that gives you gives you an actual starting point. Like, hey, boss, right now we're about 35, 45% of this new standard. We want to be at 75. I promise you, I can get you to 65 in the next 30 days. You and I both know it's just a couple of edits in the GPO, and we push and done. You push it out by global policy, and magically, I just, look at all the, I just did this. This is how much I'm dedicated to you guys to get you better. It's very easy to illustrate improvement. It shows that you're actually hitting a target and you're maintaining a target. And that's something that can transfer into discussions on performance, overall expansion of the organization, and overall security posture. It's a target they reach for. It's a goal they reach for. I mentioned I would hit it later. Please, please, please stop using the one enterprise app that only runs on Java 1.5, 1.6 is the reason why you can't update all your browsers on your desktops. Tired of hearing it. You're playing Russian roulette with your employees if you continue letting your desktop stay that way. There's no excuse for it anymore. We have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of virtualization products. Lots of them are free. Some of them are really expensive. They usually start with Citrix in the front of their name. Microsoft even kind of gives it away with VApp. You can virtualize a busted browser environment so the employees can still work on the mission-critical busted application that needs to be segmented far, far away from everything else that can still run on Java 1.5. Just make sure that one box can't go to the internet. There's a lot of ways to actually allow yourself to update and modernize your desktop environments without crippling the business. You can still do business. Just come up with an alternative option for them. Next one up, my personal favorite, biggest snake oil in the industry today, $100,000, and that's cheap, for a security information and event management product. So if you've never read the marketing, you never looked at these products before, some of you actually probably have them, most of you probably have them today. They were touted as being the best thing since sliced bread, and they provide real-time alerting and analysis of the events in your environment to catch the bad guys in the action. I love the McAfee branding because for years I always said, we stop the bad guys. No, you don't. Yeah, we slow them down. Kind of, maybe. So brass tacks. As a pen tester, doing this for many, many years at this point, I've yet to find many that are effective. Realistically, 85% of them are ineffective at actually identifying a breach in the process of a breach or within a month of a breach. Why? Number one rule, garbage in, garbage out. If you do not actually spend the time and investment to actually tune your logs to actually give you enough data to work in, I kind of gave it away in the last section there. If you didn't actually feed it correctly, it's not going to have enough data to actually tell you you've been hacked. And that's usually the biggest area of concern is, number one is, it's an enterprise product. It's an enterprise investment. It needs to be an enterprise investment. That means not only do you have to acquire technology or a solution, you actually have to figure out how to get the logs to it. You have to feed it. You have to care for it. You have to tune it. You actually have to, put an enterprise commitment behind it. And logging is not sexy unless you talk to Michael Gow and he loves logs. This guy that wrote the Windows logging cheat sheet. That, if you haven't got it, go get it. But it's one of the most unsexiest things we can do as admins. But guess what? It's fundamental. Should we do log management? Heck yes. It just makes sense to actually aggregate everything. But make sure you're enabling yourself to actually be successful when you do this. Invest in time and effort. And unfortunately, I blame the vendors a lot simply because every time I go and look at them, they always tell, the common answer is how many people do I need to run my SIM? And usually the generic answer is 3 to 5. Depending on the organization, it may be as many as 19. I've seen some very large implementations that the average events per second were well over 210,000. So there was over $5.5 million of SIM products sitting in the corner, spinning away in hard drives. So that type of product takes that much of commitment. I like to use the SAP example. Anyone familiar with SAP software, small company? Their products run about $2 to $5 million. They actually only sell a handful of them. If you actually get a list of their SKUs, last time I looked at it, there was like less than 25 things on the page. But the implementation is 5 times as much. So the product's $4,000. The implementation is $45 million. $4 million, $45 million. That's how much effort it takes to get those products to be useful in your environment. And unfortunately, the SIM vendors have done themselves a massive disservice by not actually articulating that. It takes investment on top of the capital they had to spend to get any value out of these things. The other problem that I personally have is what drives this industry? Compliance. That's the easiest way to get some things approved, unfortunately, is, oh, I need this for my XYZ compliance. And unfortunately, a lot of products reflect that mindset. In the case of SIM, I challenge you to find a SIM that has a dashboard out of the box that's not at least 95% geared for compliance reporting versus security operations. And I've yet to meet one. If you find it, let me know. But I've seen just about the top 20 that are floating around out there. They're built for compliance reporting. They're not built for security operations. So you're going to have to go back and tune it. You're going to have to go back there and create that custom dashboard to get useful alerts coming out of the system. My simple example, and yes, I have fun with the TSA as well. My simple example is what most SIM vendors call low and slow brute forcing. I call the common way we always did it. As a bad guy, I break into the network. I sit on the wire for an hour a day. I enumerate all the users out of the domain, and I try one password a day against all of them. Now, in the case of most organizations, that will not actually throw an alert. It might create a log if you're logging successful and failed login attempts, but where's the correlation that said, this one user or this one IP address tried to log into 1,200 accounts with password 1? More importantly, if you have that, great. You're going to get an alert that, I was on your wire trying to brute force, one password a day. What's the most important part of that? Username, but just the opposite. So we know we have a bad guy on our network. Wouldn't it be nice to know how many accounts he successfully logged in with? So now I know, it's the converse. Unfortunately, it's the duality of our industry. We do a lot around false conditions. Do I have access to this file? No, throw an alarm. We never really talk about that true scenario. Do I have access to this file? Yeah, okay, knock yourself out. We don't log both conditions. We don't log true and false. So, having that properly tuned, feeding that information back into the SIM will actually give you the ability to identify when I was attempting to brute force you, and more importantly, how many times I was successful within the same time window. So again, you can see the cause and effect of the attack as it's progressing. Unfortunately, the only product today that actually does this out of the box is actually Logarithm, but it's going to cost you about $250,000. So it ain't cheap to get to that level. However, there are some other solutions that get you there. The main thing I'm really getting to here is make sure you test. Go through test cases, either with a pen tester or have someone consult you on how to do your own pen testing if you have the skill set in-house, and go through test cases. Hack yourself. And then go back and look at the places you do and do not have visibility. Find your blind spots and address the blind spots, or at least come up with a process to deal with it. But the bad fact is, basically out of the box, I kind of said it earlier, most operating systems, especially Windows, only give you 35 to 45% of the data you're going to need when you get breached. There's I mentioned about forensics. If you haven't looked at forensics, there's a reason why we go and grab RAM. You've heard of memory analysis for forensics. It's because we got tired of the fact that there was nothing there on the operating system. We had to find a new way to actually find what was going on the system at that time. So acquire the RAM because we know there's nothing written to the log out of the box. My personal fave, being a geek, X-Files, it's the Pusher episode where the guy broke into the J. Edgar Hoover building and actually he had the ability to push his will on the people they saw what he wanted them to see. So he's walking into the building wearing nothing more than a word, pass on a piece of cardboard stuck to his lapel, breaking in. And that's kind of my modern interpretation of it as well, as many times the biggest gap in SIM implementations is the basic fundamentals. Your job is to tell me nothing more than what happened, for logging events in my environment, for authentication events. And we don't feed it, and more importantly, you can't come up with these basic correlations that I was giving the example of, like the password 1. Out of the box, most of those don't even have that functionality. You have to add it. You have to learn how to actually write that query in their language. There is a product that helps you. It's called StealthBits Intercept. Small company out of New Jersey. Costs $12 a user on your domain. It's much cheaper than actually like InFocus, which is to enforce a real password policy. It's like $125 a user. So this one actually gives you a lot of visibility into your environment, and it feeds your SIM. So QRadar loves it so much, they actually go around telling people you can actually throttle down the normal alerting we tell you to do out of the OS and just use these guys because it's much better than what we can pull. So it's actually pretty compelling technology that actually works. So I mentioned it earlier. I saw lots of hands saying everybody loves Symantec and McAfee. So endpoint. Why do endpoints fail? And I'll even throw another class in here since we got a little bit of time. Why do sandboxes fail? Hear a lot about this company that sounds like you had a bad dinner the night before. FireEye. All these other sandbox vendors that say, we're far more effective than AV. Like, yeah, when the standard is low, it's not hard to show, throw one more alert, you're 50% better than the last guy, or, for the Texas crowd, the old Ross Perot statement, put a penny on the counter, put another penny, you've got 100% growth, but you're still only talking about 2 cents. It's the same concept here of, doing just marginally better than the last guy is really not that hard. And, why did we go blind? Why did we become ineffective? Where are the gaps in their technology? And it's pretty rare to actually get a vendor that actually be honest, like, so this is how they defeat us. So let me give you a crash course on how to defeat sandboxes. Anybody know what a sandbox is or doesn't know what a sandbox is? Real quick. Got a couple hands, so yeah. Okay, so a sandbox is basically this lovely little environment. If you remember the cartoon of Bugs Bunny back during the World War II effort where they would show him on the bomb assembly line and he was sitting there with a hammer hitting bombs labeled dud and seeing which one would explode. It's kind of like the same concept. You take a file that you actually don't know, you find a perfectly isolated Windows VM, you throw the file in there and you double click like this. For those on the internet, I'm reaching away. And so basically you double click and just wait for the explosion to happen. The sandbox will log all the file activity during that time and come back and say, yeah, it's probably malware. Here's what it did. It did some bad things. And that's essentially the concept is you're running a questionable file in an isolated environment and you've got it sterilized to the point you can actually identify what it did during that time. So how do you defeat that? Question or answers? How do you defeat running in a virtualized environment?
You run tests to see where you're running.
Exactly. Great answer. The answer was you run tests to see where you're running. So how do you identify you're in running in VMware? VMware tools? Anyone? The drivers you have to install to make it work perfectly inside of there, or my personal fave, which is the MAC address ranges, 005055 is always the first. Yeah. So, ta-da! I'm running inside of VMware because that's out of the box. But VirtualBox, Zen, what have you, they all have their characteristics to identify. I'm alone. I'm running inside of a virtual environment. So it just kind of has like it has it there. If you see the fact that you're running in a sandbox, VMware, VirtualBox, you see that Wireshark is running on the system itself, or you're running on a virtual PC, don't do anything. Don't run. Yep. So this is actually called a builder. If you can actually go out to hack forums, spend $30 and get your own custom remote access tool, aka RAT. This is the actual bundler that builds the final executable that you trick your friends and neighbors into installing. But this is the second tab. First tab is the IP address for your phone home server, your command and control server, and the port. The second tab is, here's all the advanced options to defeat all the current state of antivirus out there. So number one, if you see this, don't run. Number two, really important context. What happens if your file never does anything? What do you do? Do you wait to infinity? No, you time out. Give up. Guess what? Out of the box, FireEye is actually one of the larger ones. It waits 5 minutes for the file to do anything. So you write your payload to wait for 6 minutes. There you go. Hey, hurry, we're catching on. You're making you hackers as we go here. So you wait a few more minutes, and if it's not configured beyond the default window, it runs your bind. It lets your file go through. Yeah, I waited the approximate amount of time, couldn't get a definitive yes or no. This is bad. Off you go. And so, actually, in most cases, you'll see the payloads nowadays average about 10, 15 minutes before they do anything. So the hacker kind of sits back, has a couple of espressos, and waits for finally something to come back to him. And that's actually a very important condition because if in the case of the virtualization or sandboxes, if we sit around and wait for a long time, that's eating up CPU cycles. I can't look at anything else. I wind up getting a queue over here of waiting for files if I increase that. So it's a performance issue as opposed to a default issue. The main thing is the bad guys say, hey, guess what? We install the same products you guys use too. We take them, we build them, we break them, figure out what the default settings are. Like, I'm going to do that, and start abusing them. Anyone know the newest variant? Anyone seen a laptop in the last 4 years that had less than one CPU core? So the latest variant is run all your instruction set on Core 2 and higher. So in the virtualized sandboxes that a lot of the vendors are using right now, there's only one CPU core allocated to the VM, so they just tell their instruction set to run on Core 2 and above, and the sandbox never sees anything. They're blind to it. They're currently trying to address it. I think FireEye actually just released a patch for that, but it became very commonplace. It was abused by the Angler guys for about 1.5 years, which is why their stuff kept getting through time and time again. It's just we run on a different core. You're not looking at it. So brass tacks. How effective are these against real-world hacks or guys that get paid to break into companies day in and day out? The old school stuff, I'll be the first one to tell you, less than 10, realistically less than 10%. To be nice to them, a couple of them get a little bit better. I give props to semantics. Sonar works well. The other part, not so much. But sonar actually works pretty well. It's about the only saving grace they have. The downside is it requires internet access. So what's the first thing you do as a bad guy? If you're attacking from inside the network, you DDoS inside the network. You clog up the pipe going to the sonar server so the clients can't talk anymore to validate against you. It's not that hard. But yeah, realistically, signature-based today against a real-world attack is less than 15%. If you hear, like the semantic guy even flat out said, in his famous quote was, our product is less than 45% effective. So, if I was a manufacturer of a car, I'm pretty sure I would get sued out of existence if people came up and said, well, when you hop in your car, it's only going to crank 45% of the time. That's a problem. Whitelisting, again, remember I made the joke about, anything was better than this. Whitelisting actually had its day. It was really good for about 3 to 4 years ago. Depending on who the vendor was, I'll give props where props are due. Bit9 was very good. Carbon Black, when you added that onto it, made it excellent. But the problem is the bad guys are, again, finding more and more ways to get around those environments. Why don't, instead of trying to run in the places that I know are going to get blacked out, because whitelisting is just the opposite context, I'm not looking for bad stuff, I'm only looking for the good stuff. Why don't I write my payloads to only run in the good places? So how do you defeat whitelisting? Simple. You make sure your payload runs in PowerShell or .NET on the Windows platform. In the case of .NET, this is really good because it runs on all your servers, runs on just about all your major infrastructure components, and the graced execution space and execution set inside of the default settings in both solid core from McAfee and Bit9, it's pretty much big enough to run a Mack truck through. You can drop a couple payloads on that thing and just kind of hang out all day long, and looks good, boss. No problems here. So again, it's, while they were effective a couple of years ago, the attackers have gotten used to what's being used. We know what you run because we've run it ourselves. We've found the weaknesses, and we're abusing nothing more than default settings. If you guys just do a couple, in the case of Bit9, it's literally 2 checkboxes in the master config settings. Go to enable, searching the PowerShell and monitor .NET execution. Click, click, done. Problem solved. We're back up to 90% effectiveness. But unfortunately, no one ever. I've yet to find, I'd say, less than 4 deployments that had that turned on out of the gate. So it's pretty rare to find that, just that extra step because it did so much better than the last stuff. Again, well, we found it and now we're abusing it. So what is working? Another shill moment for one vendor, and that is silence. It's a math-based approach. It's the new hotness, and more importantly, I have yet to find anybody, self-included, to successfully get a payload on a silence-protected system with blocking mode turned on. So the one caveat. So anyone remember the research about the equation group? It was maybe our government's little custom malware that infected boot sectors and infected the PROM on drives and hung out for a really long time. The research was released by Kaspersky about, it's almost a year ago, that they officially put a name on it. But long story short is this is malware that very few vendors could actually identify. In the 18 samples they released, Silence caught 16 of them immediately off the bat due to their math approach to things. And the other 2 that they didn't catch, they caught when they were trying to execute in memory. So their big thing, or the thing I actually proudly liked about these guys is if you never got a chance to go to RSA, thousands of vendors, and you get to learn the marketing term for the year and the key buzzword that the entire industry is going to come forth with for the year. The only vendor on the floor talking about prevention, Silence. Everybody else was still talking about, okay, that's interesting, nice hum. Everybody else was basically talking about identification and how they could help you identify. And some had some good stories, most of them didn't. But in the case of Silence, they're the only one I could actually identify that actually said, no, we're here to stop. We're actually going to prevent attacks. And their approach is actually fairly sound at this point. Essentially, they took originally 12.5 million files, threw them in a big dumpster, shook them all around, and basically came up with 5,000 traits of good and bad things, boiled that down, and basically every time they looked at a new file, if you landed in the black area, the white area, it was a yes or no scenario, gray, question mark, and that's kind of where that extra memory management does. They actually track about 15 different memory states that are commonly abused by us, like pivot shell, memory allocation, all the other fun, anytime you access LSA, SS, kind of a glaring example of a bad guy on your system. Why don't we actually monitor that and kill it in case we see it? They do that out of the box. So if you get a chance, by all means, take a look. It's a nice new approach on getting effective endpoint protection. Either way, If you can't afford something new, your company is embedded with the other solution, and you're no chance of getting rid of it anytime soon. Number one, make sure that your AV is actually logging to your SIM. After you've tuned your SIM, remember we talked about that earlier. Tune the SIM, make sure it's actually getting in there, and then this radical thing, read the alerts. If Symantec, if McAfee is actually throwing alerts that it's actually catching stuff, number one, being the sarcastic guy I am, I'm first thing when it's like, okay, what is it missing? But at least I know I'm being attacked. I at least can see that, AV is detecting something on the network, probably want to look and make sure I'm not missing anything at that point. But you feed it, get it in there, make sure you're actually reading those alerts. Number two, if you're not going to be able to change that solution, look for something that's going to give you some visibility. That's kind of where the next-gen argument comes in for on IDS, IPS, or network firewall. You can actually start seeing that traffic move around in your network and gain that visibility you're going to need. So what does failure look like? One of the things we do at my company is called a persistence assessment. People actually pay us to break into their network and hang out. And then their goal, our goal is to get the stuff that really hurts them. Their goal is to find us and get us out of their network in a set duration of time. So this is an example of about a 2-month project. At the top of the screen, you'll basically see it's Cobalt Strike running on there. We like it because we can add it to Beef, which is the browser exploitation framework. Essentially, all we did was we got our target's name. We went to data.com. Anyone familiar with that one? So you've probably seen some OSINT tools like ReconNG and so forth that are open source information gathering tools. If you're lazy like me, spend a little bit of money and abuse the sales tools that the salespeople have to their access. Anyone ever heard of Salesforce.com? They resell their data through data.com. So how do I profile a company? I wait for you to give your business card to some sales guy. When it lands into Salesforce.com, they distill and resell all that data, which is a complete map of the organization, executives, all the fun stuff. There's also other websites like RainKing.com, cost about 10, 15 grand a year to have access to. That's where actually sales guys add so much detail, like, this guy drinks this is his favorite strip club, that's how to go get a sale. I mean, there's that much personalized information inside of that on how to profile a company. So there's a lot of data to be had in commercial avenues as well. So for about $500, you can download most major corporations and still get a nice map. Who do I want to target? In this case, I want to target the admins. Easiest target, and I gain immediate privileged access in the organization. So we came up with a phishing campaign. It may or may not have been a very large company you're familiar with that was a 20% coupon. Get off, if you go in here and you log in with your username and password to make sure that you're actually an employee of this company, we'll give you a coupon for 20% off at the local Costco. And sure enough, they fell for it. Matter of fact, the joke was it was a little too effective because we started getting spouses, and they were even though the email said don't send this to anybody else, they were sending it off to their spouses, and we got some ancillary hits from other companies and had to like, oh, we're sorry we hacked you. We were just trying to hack your husband. So after we got that under control, we were actually able to then gain a foothold in the organization. We are already under privileged accounts. We then looked around, found the magical PCI network, pivoted into the PCI network, and what you can kind of make out there at the bottom, you'll be able to see it in the actual screen printouts. The original request was, we want to know if we're vulnerable to the same thing that happened to Target. Ta-da! That's the target breach. So basically, we were able to get into kiosk systems. This organization's fairly large. You know them, and I can't tell who it is, but you use your credit card to check into their kiosk. And once we were in there, we were basically able to drop in our own RAM scraping utility written under PowerShell, and just kind of hang out and collect credit cards. We specifically only targeted 4 systems. Anyone want to guess how many after 2 months how many valid credit card numbers we had? Just shy of 50,000, and that was only off of 4 boxes. So we could have done, had we been bad guys, we could have done far more damage. But to keep them in PCI compliance, we actually started on their own servers. Kept it inside the network and everything. So we kept them compliant the entire time we were doing this. But the joke was they could have spotted us everywhere, but they didn't. So what did we abuse? Number one, anyone ever heard of Proofpoint? Large company that does spam filter and everything. I see that they might need some things to work on. A little common trivia question: how do you get past most AV signatures out of the gate? Spend $200 and get a code signing cert, because what bad guy would ever sign their code? So, spend a little bit of money, do some DNS, trickery to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Privatize your data when you register your domain. So pay for the DNS proxy at GoDaddy. Seems to magically work on a lot of these spam filter guys that they just looks good to me. I can't look any further than this. And we meet our email looks good enough that it's not completely spam, so they just kind of let it through. So we abuse their system. Number 2, FireEye. Yeah, I love stick in the eye here. But yeah, basically we successfully defeated their now common ways to defeat their system, aka we waited for 15 minutes to run our payload, and we successfully bypassed both the web and email solution. So again, it's not that hard of a challenge once you know what you're going after. And how do we find out that we're using FireEye? What was that? Close. Yep, Salesforce. One of these sources that it actually shows you where the data came from was the FireEye rep. Hey. So it's, if you actually have a paid account, it tells you where the data sources came from. And then last but not least is once our payload landed on the desktop, we defeated Symantec. Shocker, I know. So we got past the endpoint protection, but more importantly, Sonar, which is actually, like I said, it's a redeeming feature of Symantec. It did not throw a flag simply because we never did privilege escalation. We just stayed as the user we were. And that's actually another common technique that we're seeing time and time again doing forensics, is the bad guys never escalate permissions. They just hang out as whatever user they came in on. It's amazing what you can get to when you just pretend to be a real user. Anyone ever seen a SharePoint website that when you go to it and it says you don't have access, would you like to send an email to ask for access? Click it. Sure. Magically, within about 24 hours, you have access. Why not? I'm hacking via SharePoint. I'm elite, yo. Just click, baby, click. Solutions abused, Palo Alto. Now, this is the next-gen technology. It was not a fault of their technology. It was the fault of the implementation. When it was deployed, they did not actually do DNS and HTTP HTTPS termination. So they could not see our payload, and more importantly, we actually spent another $200 on our malware, so we actually have SSL encryption turned on. So far I'm about $2,000 invested into this, and I've got thousands and thousands of credit cards. That's a good return. I'm okay with that. And that's unfortunately how bad it is in most cases, to defeat the security solutions, just use security, turn on SSL, hey, sign your certs. Logarithm. This one was interesting, we had fun with it. The biggest one is after 3 months of totally running in their environment, including leaving data that was blatantly obvious and really blatantly, should not have been able to create this file share. Basically, we only generated 15 alerts during the entire time. Their actual average alerts they were getting out of that thing was over 100,000 an hour. So we were less than 0.00001% of their overall logged volume. So we knew we were pretty much hidden inside the noise. FIM, file integrity monitoring, actually worked. Problem was, it's not logged. They actually did not write the file integrity monitoring correctly into the log statement. So they had it turned on. It was generating logs, and we could see them on the local box like, any day now. They should find this now. No. It wasn't part of their process to actually go and look at the file integrity monitoring. And then my personal favorite is when compliance procedures fail. Their compliance officer, because again, a SIM is built for compliance. One of the most common out-of-the-box feature is it gives you a list of all new domain admin accounts created. So apparently it did not stand out when the domain admin account was called card scanning service. We tried to be a little obvious, besides like DD, DirectDefense in the front of it. But the joke was we actually had a remote desktop to the head auditor that we knew was logging into it. So we were like looking over his shoulder, kind of. We were watching him. We watched him circle on the report, like, what's this? And he never asked. He never escalated. They found the account, but they never escalated up to ITIDS to ask who created it. So we were caught, but no one ever escalated. And then finally, the biggest crux in their patching, or their problem was patching. So they used WSUS, SCCM deployed in everywhere. The desktops were actually pretty good. The desktops themselves, the operating system, were less than a month behind on patches. So that was actually very commendable. Servers are actually a little bit worse. They're about 90 days behind, but still commendable in most cases. However, all the crap running on top of the desktops would average 3 months to a year of being out of date. So again, it was a very target-rich environment in that case where we could just like, don't attack the OS, just attack Adobe, attack Java. I'm on. Thanks for playing. So we, again, it's areas that we need to look at to address these. Number one, getting strategic about it. Is it time for your company to go next gen? If you don't take care of the other 2 or 3 problems that I'm listing here, you should really point to one of these. Pick one and at least run with it. If you can't get to an updated SIM or an updated endpoint, take a look at the newer generation firewalls and internal intrusion detection solutions. Patch management, pick a standard, run with it. Go as far as you possibly can and automate as much as you can. There are free solutions out there that still let you automate. You're just going to pay for it in headcount to maintain them. So is it time to invest in a patch management solution? The 2 biggest ones out there to date, BigFix, IBM finally got a back around to calling it BigFix again, and Lumention, the product formerly known as PatchLink. Those are the 2 big prominent players in that scale to very enterprise level. Like Walmart is BigFix's big marquee account. They deploy patches on 210,000 assets in 72 hours. So it's actually kind of a cool globe effect. We see it go from red to green globally. Yeah, it's kind of cool. SIM, prioritize your investment. Most organizations don't. Spend some time, kick the tires, see what issues you have with it, and more importantly, try to find ways to actually get some return on your investment. It's a ton of money. You might as well throw some people at it as well. And endpoint protection, real simple. The old Apple moniker. Time to think different. Think different. Look at the alternative solutions. Again, paying the guys to continue to do absolutely nothing or only crank 45% of the time doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's better ways to invest the money. So, with that, I'll throw it out there. Any questions? Cool. Thanks, guys. You guys are easy. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the technologies that you discussed, which I see emerging quite often now, is DLP technologies.
So the question is, I didn't talk about DLP technologies. I've yet to find one that's good to really talk about. The better players, the foundational players in my experience so far have been the old school guys. WebSense, Triton works really well if you're willing to spend time and beat it in submission. Vontu, the product that Symantec bought, was good. Unfortunately, at this point, it's starting to show its age due to lack of visible investment. So
like when you're in your pen testing exercise, when you're trying to exfiltrate data off a network,
mm-hmm.
do you find DLP technology as a barrier? And how do you know
so the question was, do I find DLP as a barrier? And short answer is no. I've yet to find one that actually works. Well, let's put some context around that. I have had a couple of them throw alerts when I stole credit card data that was not obfuscated. But one of the most common techniques, just because the file sizes, there's a lot of like little daily files, is zip it up and then put a password on the zip file so the DLP can't extract it, and that's kind of how we get around it. The other technique that actually gets actively abused a lot is don't be English minky. So if you, for example, if you remember the Code Red vulnerability that came out with Windows almost 10 years ago, the reason it was identified in Japan is because they're not English speaking. It was the way the operating system interpreted kanji into English or Unicode for non-English speaking code sets. So if you actually take a string text file and just convert it to hex, convert it to something that's one step beyond what a DLP is typically looking for, that's how you get past them. Same way we get past web application firewalls. We don't type tick or 1 = 1. It's %2b, %2f, blah blah. It's just Unicoding. Unicode equivalents get past a lot of basic things because again, the guy didn't think to, the developer didn't go beyond just English speaking. Sure. Yes. Anyone else? Actually, the stat that I have in the slide deck for you is their application whitelisting is roughly about 50 to 60% effective. The problem is it's now starting to be abused because we all know how they're defaultly deployed. Because it's better than what we've had with AV, no one actually turns the default checkboxes on or off in some cases. So the problem is they are effective. They're not 100%. Out of the gate, and my goal is to always, if I recommend something, I at least want 90, right? Unfortunately, they're not even that much out of the gate. And then secondarily is we're starting to abuse the default conditions, mainly In the case of Bit9, which is the one we encounter the most often, outside of that, it's the McAfee's solid core. Find that a lot of embedded point-of-sale systems, and all you have to do is make your payload run in PowerShell or .NET, and you're in a blessed execution space, so it works just fine. Anybody else? Cool. Thanks for your time. Make sure you hit the if you haven't hit the raffle already, just make sure you hit that up. So, thanks, guys.